I want to say something about children making noise in the synagogue. For 2 years, we had a synagogue where there were no children to make noise. And I cannot tell you, especially on this Shabbat of comfort, how comforting it is to hear kids make noise again. It's a problem I hope we will always have. Now make sure they're quiet. Because both our bar and bat mitzvah love sports, I thought I would start with a sports analogy this morning. So some of you know that when a quarterback wants to change the play that the coach has given him, he does what's called calling an audible. That means that he gives different signals from what the team is expecting. The reason it's called an audible is because they have to hear it. If you don't hear it, you can't carry out the play. And one of the things that you see at a football game is that crowds will make noise to try to obstruct the listening of the team so they can't hear the quarterback's audible. Another way of describing it is to say that the quarterback calls a listen. That's what he really does. And in a way, that's what the Torah does this morning. Moshe starts off by recounting how he pleads with God to listen to him and to allow him to go into Israel, but God will not grant that request. And then Moshe turns around, and throughout the book of Devarim, which remember is Moses' last speech, he uses over and over again in different formulations the word Shema, listen. The most famous, of course, is the Shema, which we read this morning. But Shema is actually a motif of Deuteronomy, because Moses knows how important it is to listen. And in the end, remember that God takes Moses up the mountain and sees to Moses' burial God's self, which means that even though God doesn't grant the request of Moses, God has listened to the anguish in Moses' words. And Moses has been heard. Now I want to return for a moment to the football example. The idea of the crowd making noise is to ensure that the team can't hear the quarterback. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized that that is an analogy for the world in which we live. More than any generation in history, we are surrounded by noise. And I don't just mean actual physical noise, that you can't go into a store or a restaurant or a wedding or a bar and bat mitzvah without music that makes it very hard to hear the person next to you. I mean the noise of all these voices on social media, on cable, all the noises that make it hard for us to listen to one another. Because everyone I know thinks that other people don't listen to them. And almost no one evaluates whether they listen to other people. But of course, what Moshe's book is about is the art of listening, which does not, as we know from the example of God, mean agreeing. So in debates that are really difficult, like was this or that person a good president or a bad president? Or is this or that person's gender legitimate or illegitimate? understandable or not understandable. All I hear is the noise of the crowd and no one listening. Jews have always been different, so we have always asked the world to listen to us because we want it to be understood. But you understand that you cannot be understood unless there's someone willing to understand. And those of us who plead to be listened to have to learn how to listen. Shema is the central prayer of the Jewish tradition. And the first word is listen. I really do think that if you had to diagnose in a single word what would make our country heal a little bit, it would be listening. It would be if we all called an audible. If we just said, okay, we're actually going to listen to each other without, for the moment, arguing back. You know, I've said it before. My friend Joseph Epstein says, Jews don't listen, they wait. I know you're talking. Well, as soon as you're done, I'm going to tell you what you should think. I'm just waiting. But I once read a novel called The White Tiger, in which the author wrote, I'm not an original thinker, but I am an original listener. And I thought, how great to try to be creative in the way you listen. In not judging and not answering, but just Shema Yisrael, listen Israel. Because the wise person, as Pirkei Avot tells us, is someone who learns from everybody. There is no one from whom, if you don't listen deeply enough, you cannot learn. So in the end of the Torah, Moshe goes up the mountain, knowing that he and God still don't exactly agree. He believes he should be able to walk in the land, and God says, no, you may not walk in the land. But at least God has listened. So maybe we can take the lesson of listening to one another and bring a little bit more peace to a noisy world. Shabbat Shalom. They were quiet the whole time. Wow. Amazing. Please thank all the children for me. Tell them I'm really impressed. Page 204, Ein Kelohenu.